right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tuesday, February 24th, 2009 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Mr. City Clerk, could you call the roll?
Council members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian. Mayor Draymond.
Here. And could we hear your report, please, Mr. City Clerk?
We need a roll for the agency as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is a
For the agency.
joint meeting. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian. Chairman Najarian.
Here.
If we could now, please, let's hear the
Certainly.
item.
The agenda for the February 24th, 2009 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, February 19th, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. The item before you today is a public hearing, Director of Development Services regarding proposed mixed-use development project to be located at 3900 San Fernando Road, the Glendale Triangle Project. And at 1A is a agency resolution certifying that the redevelopment agency has reviewed and considered the information in the environmental impact report, making certain findings and determinations regarding the environmental effects of the project, and adopting a statement of overriding considerations. At B is a council resolution certifying that the city has reviewed and considered the information in the environmental impact report, making certain findings and determinations regarding the environmental effects of the project, and adopting a statement of overriding considerations. At C is an agency motion approving Stage 2 design review subject to agency comments and conditions. And at D is an agency motion approving a parking exception for 82 spaces subject to findings and conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. And as we have been doing for the past while, Mr. City Attorney, a little housekeeping here. If you could quickly run through the items A, B, C, and D, and just clarify which are agency items and which are council items.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, first item, 1A is an agency resolution. A and B is a council resolution. Those are both certifying the environmental impact report. Those should be moved and certified first before the other entitlements, which are found at 1C and D. C and D may be moved together as agency motions.
Okay, so A and B first, but as separate items, obviously.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
Ask, then should the agency and the council concentrate on the ER first and find out if we have any questions or comments from the public on that,
I think
and get it out of the way?
That's where we're headed next.
Most of this is going to be on the...
Yeah, that's where we're headed next. I have currently, how many of you are here on this item? And I hope it's all of you because we don't have anything else scheduled. We have 4 speaker cards on this. Let's begin with item A, which is an agency item, Mr. Najarian. I don't know which of these, they haven't indicated A, B, C, or D, so
just call them out,
we'll,
Mr. Mayor.
Why don't you ask and find out?
Why don't you, it's an
Dan?
agency item.
Okay, we have Dan.
I would recommend you open the public hearing.
Okay,
yeah.
oh, this is the public hearing.
Yes.
It's for all items. Public hearing is opened, and let's have Dan Golovato.
On the EIR?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, if I may, this item will be broken down into 3 pieces: the environmental impact report, as you've asked for it first, design review, and then a parking exception. The speakers are all representatives, I believe, are representatives of the project, so they may speak on all 3 items, and then you can take them in any order you like. But they're here prepared to talk about the entire project.
Okay. That understanding, feel free to move between agenda items because it all... Yes, please. Mr. Golovato.
My name is Dan Golovato. I'm the first vice president of Equity Residential. We are the proposed developer of this project. Honorable Mayor and members of the council, when I last appeared before you, it was April 29, 2008. We asked for and received a Stage 1 design approval. For that, I appreciate your support. At that time, we were in a very different economic climate. The Dow was at 12,800. The unemployment rate in California was 6.8%, and the strength of our financial institutions was not in question. Subsequent to that approval, there was a time when I thought this project was not going to be able to proceed. However, working diligently both externally with outside our company and internally within Equity Residential, and with the cooperation and the help of many, we were able to put this project back on track. Today, as we request your support and approval for the Stage 2 approval and certification of the EIR, the Dow now sits at 7350. The unemployment rate is 9.3%, and we're in the midst of a recession the likes of which we have not seen since the Great Depression. And even the experts cannot agree on when we're going to see an economic recovery. Construction financing is virtually non-existent in this environment, and most of our competitors have either gone out of business or discontinued their future development. We think this project, as proposed, will be a catalyst for South Glendale, a great project for and a very attractive addition to the Glendale community. We will be providing as many as 300 new construction jobs as we are building. Our retail will create 50 to 100 new jobs, and we will be providing 218 new homes for current and future residents of Glendale. We ask for your support today to make this project feasible and your support in the future. I thank you, and if you have any questions of me now or in the future, I'm available to answer your questions.
Thank you. Eric Olson.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Olson. I'm a principal at Tom Cox Architects, or TCA, and we need the PowerPoint.
Boy, it's a good thing you're chairing this part of the meeting, Mr. Najarian.
Can only go so far with the
Wait, it brings a
hand motion.
PowerPoint presentation in, I'll tell you.
They are all very nice pictures, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right.
And who's going to help
Just
me?
tell when you'd like
click
it
through?
advanced.
I just say next slide? Okay, perfect. Thank you. We need to go backwards the other way. A dozen
That's
or
our
so
specialty,
to the
Mr.
beginning.
Cox.
There we are. We're done.
Olson, excuse me,
Okay,
Mr. Olson.
great. Thank you. If that is the beginning. The problem is the beginning looks like the end, so next slide, please. I'm sorry, this is still the end,
Like the next slide.
and that's really the end. We need to go about a dozen prior. There we go. Keep going.
Oh, that's good.
One more.
That's way
That's a short preview. Okay, I
Back to
apologize.
the beginning again.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
We loved it. It was great.
Who is our next speaker? Charles Elliott. Charles Elliott.
Oh, we do have a book here.
Same as the book. Okay, next slide. Thank you. We all know where the site is here at the Orange Triangle, located between Los Feliz, San Fernando, and Central. A short walk to the mass transit. Next slide, please. This is our concept diagram of the architecture. You'll notice that there's 3 significant corners to the project, all significant gateways, either to Glendale from different directions, and also 2 significant midpoints in the building, which we affectionately call the Crossing and the Street Cafe. Each have a special meaning, and each you'll see in the presentation derive their architectural quality and massing from that special meaning. Next slide, please. This is a good overview of the project from the air. You'll see that it's basically two buildings on top of one podium construction. This is the view from San Fernando Road, looking at the front door of the building and the main pool courtyard between the two structures. Next slide, please. There are several important sustainable attributes to the project. This project employs smart growth principles simply by its proximity to transit, the fact that it's bringing in employment or housing and employment near other sources of employment and retail. This project will clean stormwater through filtering. Rain that hits the roof will be taken down to planters that are at the base of the building between the sidewalk and the retail store fronts. This project will save water both through water-efficient landscaping and irrigation, as well as specified low water uses fixtures throughout the project. This project will help keep the city cool by replacing surface parking with covered parking. The project will use less energy than a typical project through Energy Star appliances specified, special insulated windows, and low energy use lighting. The building reduces building heat gain through fenestration that uses solar shading as well as sensitivity to solar orientation. And the project plans green programs such as in-house recycling and bicycle storage. Next brief aspect of this slide, all the mechanical equipment is located at the center of the roof structures above the corridors and will be properly screened from view from the street level. Next slide, please. This is the view of the project as you enter from the south. This is known as the apex, the intersection between San Fernando and Central. This has a significant architectural feature in that the blade element that you see there will be wrapped in Corten steel that rusts to a nice reddish-brown color. We have the color materials board here on the right, and there's a sample of that steel on that color materials board. At the base, of course, is the retail, and then adding to the sculptural quality of this big arched element are the private residential decks that cantilever out and attach to that arched element, all grounding in a real nice little sidewalk outdoor dining experience. Next slide, please. A bit of the color materials board here. We have some hard surface burnished block veneer at the base of the building, which you can see a small sample of in the photograph of the color and materials board, as well as our paint samples, and a nice bronze color for the vinyl windows that will be used throughout on the residential portion. Storefront glazing system will use that same bronze color to match. Next slide, please. This architectural feature will also include a lighting element. The Corten steel is actually two blades, if you will, with a light source in between the two, so that at nighttime we can really light up this significant part of the building as you're entering Glendale from the south. Next slide, please. This is the other significant gateway monument or architectural feature, if you will, at the corner of Los Feliz and San Fernando. This is on the green building. I like to call the two buildings the green building and the red building. And on the north side here, as another gateway as you're approaching on Los Feliz towards the west, towards Glendale, you'll see this four-story architectural feature in white plaster hovering above the retail storefront. Next slide, please. And likewise, we have a photograph of the color and materials board. This green and white building also has hard surface material at the base, burnished block that's on the color and materials board, as well as alternating green and white plaster and a metal finish on railings with white vinyl windows. Next slide, please. The third architectural feature is the corner monument at the corner of Central and Los Feliz. This one's a bit quieter than the other two because it's not quite the gateway, but still deserves an architectural feature to hold the corner. This one's grounded in storefront glass at the base. Slide, please. This is the front door of the building off of San Fernando. You see we're incorporating or integrating the signage component to the project, which I understand is a different submittal than today, but nevertheless we've been working with the signage designers. You see one element of the signage here above the front door. The tall blade sign is on top of the entry for the leasing as well as the resident entry. And then off to the right of the slide you see the parking entry for retail parking. This is also a widening of the sidewalk here, where we have an opportunity for open to the sky sidewalk dining. In our booklet we call this the plaza. Next slide, please. This is the first floor or the site plan. This is the best way to understand the workings of the building and how people get around in it. The blue calls out that leasing and resident lobby under that blade sign. Obviously yellow is all retail, and then the parking has two separate entries off of Central. Is the resident parking, which is gated and dedicated and immediately dives down to only resident parking. And then the other curb cut is for the commercial parking or the retail parking off of San Fernando. That comes into a handful of parking stalls on this top floor and then takes a ramp down to the next level down for the remainder of the retail parking. Retail users come up an elevator at the center of the plan and are able to walk out to that plaza area and go about their retail usage. There's also a second resident lobby off of Central, which has a grand staircase that takes you up to the podium level if you are a resident. Next slide, please. This is the second floor, or the courtyard level. You see the pool in our main pool courtyard between the two buildings. We've also got 3 secondary courtyards that are all open to the sky, all nice sizes and appropriately landscaped. You see here in the purple, this is the resident amenities area. Right along San Fernando, we have fitness center that looks down onto the sidewalk and the plaza area below, as well as the clubhouse and business center and recreation rooms, all grouped around this first floor area looking out over the pool. This is the part where I transition to the landscape architect's presentation. I'll be available for any questions, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And have you submitted a card?
I have indeed. I'm Charles Elliott,
Okay.
Design Principal with LRM Landscape Architecture. And we're almost done, a couple more slides, so I'll be very brief. If we can go to the next one, please. As is typical on a podium-type project like this, the largest outdoor amenity for the residents happens on this first-level podium or right above the parking structure. So this particular project is broken into a few different size courtyards with different function. If you can go to the next slide, please. The largest of the courts is obviously the pool court, and it's kept open so that we can get as large a pool as possible with spa and variety of seating situations for community gathering, and it's adjacent to the indoor community space, so we have good adjacency of use. It's well landscaped, and in this instance we have palm trees that surround the pool here to also add interest on the street level. So it helps create a dialogue that's happening between the upper level podium and the street, activating the street level as well as the podium. You can also see on this slide that each one of these units on the ground floor on this podium level has a generous outdoor patio, an added amenity to being on the ground floor or in this garden space. The landscape in this area or on the podium is a mix of both shade-tolerant and drought-tolerant plant material. So we're using the drought-tolerant material as much as possible to keep our irrigation uses down, but there are some areas where we have deep shade where we need to use a little bit more tropical-type foliage. It's a good model of sustainable design, putting the right plant in the right place. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is our next outdoor amenity, the garden court or the garden deck, and it's actually a linear space that runs from east to west, and it's broken down into more intimate scale uses, more human scale. So on either end of the court, again, engaging the street, here and here, we have elements of water and fire to attract people, create interest, and create that dialogue again between the podium and the street. Guiding the user through the space, the connection between underneath the building, we have a beautiful row of accent foliage, which also creates privacy again from our exterior patio spaces to the use space. And then again, a nice little fireplace lounge with seating on either side. Next slide, please. So we'll go back down to the street level now. The project is bounded by 3 sides, and we have 3 distinct street trees which exist on each street. These have been reviewed and approved by the City of Glendale Urban Forester, and we're actually very happy that each one of these trees is a very upright, open, lacy variety. So they work very, very well with the architecture as well as the retail uses below. They afford really, really great sight lines in from the pedestrian and the vehicular user driving by for the good visibility to the retail signage. San Fernando Road is the Eucalyptus sideroxylon, which is the ironbark. Los Feliz is the tababuya, which is actually a beautiful one blooming. I just saw it at Broadway and Chevy Chase. and Central Avenue is the London plane tree.
Excuse me, is Mr. City Manager, Madam City Turner, is he allowed to use that word here in council chambers, tababuya?
Got him at a loss for
We'll get
words.
the legal opinion after a while. Go ahead and
I could,
Mr. Mayor, I think it's okay as
call
long
it by
as
its common name,
not
which is
smoking
music.
it.
As long as you're not smoking
As long as
it,
you're
all
not
right.
smoking it, it's
That-
okay.
That is the legal distinction.
What
all
is a
right.
common name? Yeah.
I was actually hearing of a debate to create a cash crop to bring our taxes, tax
It
base
was
back.
suggested in the news today, actually,
Yes,
in the state of
I-
California, Sacramento. Yeah.
The streetscape is also designed to promote walkability within the neighborhood because, as was mentioned previously, we have some really great adjacencies with the hospital and the train and the bus line. So, using the model of walkability along San Fernando and Los Feliz, we have a generous landscape median, continuous landscape setback, if you will, that helps create a nice environment for the pedestrian and separates them from that busy vehicular traffic. At each one of the major nodes and the mid-block crossings, we've also enhanced the streetscape with enhanced paving and different pedestrian amenities. So if you go to the next slide, we're going to go counterclockwise here from the gateway, where we have our bus stop right here. So we're going to have some integrated seating as an amenity for the people waiting for the bus, and then you can see the enhanced paving and loose tables and chairs, and again, relief in the architecture to provide places and interest for the pedestrian user as they walk around this building. Next slide, please. Now we're going to go to the cafe spot. So we have our leasing center here and a generous urban plaza. Again, outdoor dining and tables and chairs and amenities for the pedestrian. And you can see again in here the landscaped buffer along San Fernando. Next slide, please. Now we're at the apex, and we're suggesting that we cup that urban plaza with a little accent foliage and a little landscape, again, to just protect that plaza from that really, really interesting intersection and a little bit more intensity of vehicular use there. So we cup that urban plaza to really create a wonderful public space. And then next slide, please. The front door from Central Avenue, again, enhanced with an upgraded paving, tables and chairs, and a variety of pedestrian amenities. And that is the last slide I have, so I'll open it up to questions, if anybody has anything.
What was the common name as opposed to the Latin name of
It's actually ePay.
eBay?
Yes.
Not eBay, ePay. eBay
You
is
can
something
buy
else, Mr. Quintero.
ePay on eBay, however, if
Can you buy tapaburas? Are they capaburas? What are they?
Tababuya.
Tapabuyas on eBay. All right.
There's one more card from Rodney Kahn.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council members, City staff. My name is Rodney Kahn. I have two brief points to make. The first item I'd like to make is, as Dan mentioned, that this project is a catalyst for the area. And I think that's an understatement. I think about a block away from us, as you know, the Mita Plaza project is being proposed. That project and those folks that are developing it are looking at this site to see if this gets approved, if this moves forward and this gets built. So I think that that's important to note. There's also another developer that's looking at this area. And I think what they're looking at, this is an untested area, and this is an unstable market. And I think that this project brings a lot of stability to this area of the city. That was my first point. The second was, actually it was an article that was sent, and it was written for the Urban Land Institute. And it talked about basically this project and what the future of construction would look like when we come out of this recession, whenever that may be. But it talked about projects that were transit-oriented projects, talking about high-density areas that are within walking distance to both markets, the hospital, and the like. This project is certainly one of those. I know that in the future, when we're looking at projects and being proposed, we certainly can point to this project and say, if you want to mimic something, if you want to look at something that's a good benchmark to go by, this is that project that we have here in the city. Anyway, those are my two brief remarks. Thank you very much for listening to me.
So the speakers.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you would join me in this. However, I think in the future we should frisk any developers that come here to make sure that they're not carrying PowerPoints with them. Beyond that, that is our last speaker.
Let's go to Mr. Quintero, then Mr. Weaver.
Okay, well, let me start by thanking the former property owners, families that have been in Glendale for many, many years. They've had excellent businesses on this site and have done very well, but I'm very happy that they have decided to sell the property, and because I think as a result, this is going to be just a tremendous boom for that entire area. Also want to thank the real estate agent that helped to put it together. I am very excited about this project. I think this is going to be a catalyst for that neighborhood, and I've talked about it 100 times as I've talked to different people in the southern portion of the city. But the very fact that you can walk to the transportation center, from that transportation center you can take Amtrak all the way to Seattle, Washington, I suppose, or anywhere else in the country. You've got MTA. You can commute to downtown, the west side, etc. We have our B-Line buses as well as the MTA buses that run through there. So there's literally no need to even own a car. If you do, you can have it parked there for weeks and maybe even months. It's the ideal location. And of course, you've got a large employer directly across the street, as well as a lot of other employers in the neighborhood. There's some high-paying jobs. Some of the workers at the Harley-Davidson dealership down the street were very interested and very surprised that we would have this project in their neighborhood. So all in all, it's just a tremendous, tremendous win for the entire zone, for the entire section of town. Then the next compliment, I guess, is the building itself. I'm very, very impressed. From the first time I saw it, I thought the architects did a tremendous job. It's certainly it may not have a LEED certification, but it's certainly a very, very green building. And I'm particularly intrigued that the water will be captured and go down to to water the landscaping. The retail is going to be great for that neighborhood and for the surrounding neighborhoods. So I'm just very pleased that we've come to fruition. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal and following the ups and downs of the parent company. And I'm glad that this company has managed to put this together, and hopefully we'll get it built quick. And I'm sure it's going to be a very, very successful project. There's just no question in my mind. So anyway, I'll support the motions when the time comes.
Mr. Weaver.
Okay, first one that we usually ask, or at least I ask, projects like this, solar panels. Unfeasible, or have you looked at it, or will you be looking at solar panels?
Come on up.
Most of the structures we've been looking at of this magnitude, we say, hey, you got nice flat roofs. Looks like it's fine for solar panels, but I know that's additional structural work to hold them, more of everything, so...
We have not looked at a solar application here, and we can look at it. I don't know if it's going to be feasible in this particular location.
Because of economics?
That's one aspect of it, yeah.
Because you have sun all day long. So as far as...
We have not looked at it in detail, and that's at this point, that's all I can tell you. Can we look at it? Yes, we can.
Because the only tall building you have is the hospital to the east, so
Yeah.
we'll get plenty of sun, and that would help us in the LEED certification that we're always looking for, the greening.
As I said, we will be glad to look at it.
Okay? Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say on the landscaping that you're putting in, you're taking into account that during the summer you're going to have high sun exposure on the south side and on the west side, and the trees, whatever you're putting there, are reflective of that condition, right? I mean, they're not just frilly trees. They're going to be more or less shade trees on those two sides.
On the street trees?
Yes.
The street trees are on all sides are large, upright, very vertical trees. So there will be good screening of solar gain from those two sides.
I mean, if people are sitting in the outdoor patios on
Absolutely.
the street.
Well, it'll be a well canopied streetscape.
Okay,
to
that's
be
all
sure.
I want to know. 3, the fin wall, is that going to be treated like the elevator at the Americana, where it was coated, I believe, to keep that rusting effect forever? Will you be doing the same thing?
That's correct. The Corten steel, or the A606, is literally a rusted steel that
And then it's
oxidizes.
coated or
with-
something, so
It's
the
the
oxidation
nature-
stays?
Right, it's the nature of the steel. The oxidation stays, and that's what protects the inner part of the steel.
Right. I thought I heard at the Americana then it was coated or something. I don't know. Just
There
just
might
a
be a
rumor.
coating as part of the fabrication process.
Well, staff would know.
But I don't know.
You don't have to answer that now. I'm just throwing that out. And since you have that up there, are you thinking about putting a flag at the very top? It's an entranceway coming north. That's lit.
That's certainly a
It stands
possibility.
out.
We literally hadn't thought of that.
The Americana has a nice big one. That'd be maybe an ideal place to put one if you're coming north on San Fernando Road and see that.
Sure.
Okay. Access to the podium, is that gated or keyed so only the residents can get to the podium level?
That's
from all
correct.
sides?
Uh-huh.
Because you kept saying, community, and I thought the residential community, you mean,
That's
can
correct.
get to the second. Okay. They're all 1 and 2 bedroom? No 3
Correct.
bedrooms.
Half 1 bedroom, half 2 bedroom.
Have 2 bedrooms. Okay, and is Burger King coming back?
That I don't know.
Well, it better be back there. Hospital people need some place to
Sorry,
eat.
Wendy's is coming in.
I just got a thumbs up from the back row, so there better be one of the retail customers in there. Other than that, it's a nice design for a triangular piece like that. I think it'll be a great place to live. Should have a lot of hospital customers. I mean, employees,
How do you mean that, Mr. Weaver?
not the customers. Now, if you want to get sick, that's the place to do, right across the street from the hospital. Anyhow, it's a great project, and Mr. Khan, I don't know whether, according to your quotes in the paper, whether the other project is going to miss the funding curve. This one made it through, it appears. I know it's tight economically, so when I talk about solar panels, I don't know what I'm saying according to the economics of it, but hopefully it could work out to do that. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Draymond.
Well, I don't think you want that as your slogan for this project, is it's a great place to get sick.
Oh, no, yeah.
Or a convenient location to get sick.
Forest Lawn's only a few more blocks
Yeah, I
away.
understand. Okay, to get really sick. To the
You go from one to the other
architect,
to
I
the
could
other.
be. I know you hadn't anticipated a flag. We didn't anticipate the question, but had you anticipated a reproduction of the Eiffel Tower on the top? By the way, I understand the Americana did that too. Anyway, I support this project, and actually not because it's moving forward. That's not the reason. Although I am appreciative, believe me. Not simply because it's a catalyst, and not because of other potential, going along with it being a catalyst, other people looking at, other developers looking at this and saying, gee, maybe we should go forward too. I support it because I think it's a very fine project all by itself, and I have felt this way more or less since the beginning of discussions of this project. And I'd like to talk about briefly the 10 reasons why I believe that. Yes, Mr. Weaver, 10. First of all, it is an architecturally significant design. And that's not just because it's an unusual design. It is an architecturally significant design, and we haven't seen, in my view, a lot of proposals come to fruition in the last year or two that are architecturally significant. And As someone who works in the preservation field, it is important to me because a large portion of historic preservation and preservation in general is not just about, and I harp on this a lot, it's not just about preserving old structures. It's about creating the new architectural landmarks for the future. And I think this accomplishes that. Number two is that I think it is visionary architecture. Number three is that I think it will vitalize and uplift an area of the city that desperately needs it. And we don't often see projects of this caliber in this part of the city. And I think that is incredibly important. The fourth point I wanted to make is that it is sustainable. It has a lot of sustainable elements to it, which pleases me greatly. So thank you. And I know it pleases my colleagues as well. Those are elements that you don't see when you look at the drawings and the up there, and you may not see when you look at the building once it's completed. But they're there nonetheless, and in this day and age, very important, so I thank you. I think that another reason for me, the fifth point, is that it anticipates a lot of our parking needs, and we aren't having to go back and forth with the public over where the parking is going to go for this project, and I greatly appreciate that. The next point is that it serves as a gateway, as has been mentioned, to our city, and again, a portion of our city that I think has been neglected. And so this is, as far as I'm concerned, by all means visually a great improvement that will provide a gateway to our city. The next point to me is that it demonstrates, perhaps in my mind, the best integration of landscape design, architecture, and transportation opportunities that I have seen come before me since I've been elected to the City Council. And I applaud you for that. The next to last reason is that this project, and this, by the way, please don't underestimate this point. For me, it's a very significant point. One of the reasons that I am supporting this, aside from all the others, is that this project came through the front door. And that, I think, is significant and extremely important and should be a shining beacon to others who bring projects forward. This didn't come as a result of any kind of maneuvering. Everything that you see here is what you have seen here through the different phases as it's come along. And as a result, there aren't, in my view, hidden burdens to the public that are to be looked past or looked around. I appreciate that extremely. In the extreme, I appreciate that. So thank you very much on that. Lastly, the 10th point is because I didn't want to end with 9. In seriousness, I think we will look back at this in 75 years. We'll look at this building, and whomever owns the property will be saying to themselves, you know, this blade in the front and the lighting, how many times have we had this discussion in the city? We have to preserve this. We need to preserve this. We need to restore this building. It is significant architecture. That was forward thinking on the part of the designers, and of course the City Council will get credit, and so will the agency, for that, for being such visionaries as to look at this and say, this is very good for our city. But really the work is yours, that you did. And those are my 10 points. I thank you very much. This has been a very rewarding project to support.
Haven't you ever heard cheaper by the dozen?
Mr. Quintero.
I forgot to mention, actually, that the park fees will be about how much, Mr. Lance of Fame, Mr. Starbird, the park fees?
$750,000.
Yes, thank you for asking. The park fees are about $760,000. In addition to that, we calculated last year or a year and a half ago, you put in place a policy of 75% of the tax increment, and that is $282,000 a year.
So for the public, I just want to make sure they understand, 750-plus thousand will go directly to the Glendale Parks, and then approximately, how much, over 200,000 a year?
I'm sorry, about $210,000 a year.
210,000 a
from the
year.
increment.
That will be going into Glendale Parks, and since this is a redevelopment area, the parks will be built in this general area, either in the redevelopment area or in the surrounding neighborhood. So it's a
Mr.
big
Quintero,
win.
if I could add, $3.2 million to just in lieu housing fees to build affordable housing. That's in addition to the 20% that we would set aside as we normally do for affordable housing.
Mr. City Manager.
On that, an item that we don't generally include in the list, but I think we should for future reference, the environmental notes that there's an estimate of 68 students. Based on current ADA, for a school district that has been losing students, that's probably on the other side of about $300,000 a year in increased revenues to our school district, in addition to the tax increment that Phil has noted passes through to them. So something else we should probably note for future housing projects, given the state of our schools, is that ADA and the value that projects that bring families and children bring to our school district.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to add one thing based on what you said. Future historic values. If you look at the fin wall there, that comes as close as anything I've seen in Glendale to the Glendale Federal Building, which is now a historic monument. Someday that will fit in the same picture, 50 years from now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Weaver, and it reminds me of one other point that I left out of my. So I actually
11.
did end with 9. No, this does make it an even 10. Nobody was counting, I guess. I overlooked, and that is the opportunities that it will present for retail and commerce in our city, and I think that is important as well. I know this area extremely well, and for 4 years of my life, for reasons I won't explain now, early mornings, I would go for walks in this neighborhood, and I would look at that site. Never in a million years could I have imagined that such a beneficial and attractive and architecturally significant project could rise on that site. I'm pleased with it. Mr. Najarian.
A lot of it has been said, and I, too, am very much in favor of this project. I'm very happy that the developer is going forward in these uncertain times. But one thing is certain is that it is going to be appreciated in the city of Glendale on many, many levels. It's going to provide 218 residential units and help ease the housing crunch that we currently have in the city. It is going to provide an initial infusion of $760,000 for our parks, and thereafter a $210,000 a year benefit to our parks as we get the tax increment money. And that money certainly can be well spent. And just in the past few weeks, we've been wondering as to how we're going to fund certain parks projects, and this certainly comes at an appropriate time. I am happy that it will provide some retail, because it's certainly a vibrant area now with the hospital there and the convergence of pretty much our main streets in Glendale. It is our entryway from the south. We're very happy that we have such a nice design. It does remind us of the Glendale Federal Blade that is duplicated, I think, a few times throughout the city. I'm very happy that with regard to the bus stop and the transit feature there, that you have placed some extra amenities for people waiting for the buses. I saw you pointed out some tables and some shade features where presumably many of the workers at the hospital can sit and have a cup of coffee while they wait for their bus, or the residents who may be working in other parts of the city and beyond can have that as their starting point. And I think that rolls into the next issue, which the transit-oriented development. One of our items, item CD D, is to provide a parking exception for 82 spaces. And I think that type of joint use commercial retail, residential, as well as the transit-oriented proximity to our bus lines and our Metrolink and Amtrak and other transit facilities certainly justifies granting that exception. Mr. Quintero was talking about cars sitting in the garage not being used. I could clearly see that. Imagine if you work at the hospital, either as a technician or a nurse. What a great place to live, right across the street. Car, what car? I'm waiting for the red light. That's my walk sign. That's my commute. So I think that is very, very exciting. One thing that we hear a lot in this season, which happens to be the election season, if anyone is not paying attention, is the attention towards sustainability. Why should we let someone build 218 units when we're going to be cutting back on our water supply from the Metropolitan Water District by 30%? So if the architect could just come forward and just hit the highlights of the sustainability features, I think it's important to realize what you're doing, and although we're not requiring this to be a LEED certified, you're certainly incorporating many LEED features into it. And if you can just repeat those, I think it's important for everyone to know
Sure.
the special attention that you're paying towards sustainability.
Sure. And simply by the nature of this kind of project, the type of construction and materials used, coupled with the proximity to mass transit and employment, you're a lot of the way there already. So that helps out a lot. In terms of water conservation, yes, landscaping, irrigation is low water usage. I've been told that all water fixtures specified will be low water usage, and that can be anywhere from a little bit to hardly any water coming out of the shower spigot, and that hasn't been figured out yet. In terms of energy usage, there's a lot of things that we can do. We're specifying insulated vinyl windows that cut down on the noise that comes in from the big streets, as well as from heat gain and heat loss. We are specifying efficient air conditioning units, and let's see what else. By the nature of putting the parking underground, keeps it cool, keeps the city cool. You don't have all that surface parking. A lot of smaller programs, recycling, bicycle storage.
You will have bike storage? Bicycle storage?
Bicycle parking spaces.
Parking?
Yeah.
And in terms of recycle and solid waste, I hope you're just not going to have one big trash dumpster. It really helps if you have the recycle bins. Not many of our multi-units have that, but if that's incorporated, that would really be a good feature. As I see that is one of the statement of overriding concerns, is that they're concerned about the solid waste creation with regard to our landfill space. So certainly the more recycling opportunities you have, not just for the residents, but also for some of the retail, would certainly go a long way in my mind in voting for that statement of overriding concern in that particular area.
Two ways we typically do it. We have 2 trash chutes, one for recycled content, one for not. Or if you have one chute down in the trash room, there's a couple of dumpsters, one for metals, one for glass, and that works out pretty well. It all depends on the kind of facilities that the city provides or you contract with to pick up the trash.
Excuse me, I noticed the roof is painted white, so it's going to be a very light color, reflective, or...
Again, we haven't got into that much detail, but that's typically the easiest thing you can do is have a highly reflective roof just by painting the roof white. Keeps down on the heat gain of the building, and as we all know in this part of the country, heat gain is the main thing. Keep the building cool, use less energy to artificially keep it cool. I should also point out that it's rare in a multifamily building, at least so far, but we're real happy that at least some of the architecture originally comes from solar orientation. So if you'll notice on Los Feliz, we have big windows that look to the north. You don't get a lot of heat gain on the north. Then on the southwest side, we've got smaller windows that are tucked in behind the decks. There's a little bit of shading for those. So that helps to keep the building cool as well. And then really good windows are standard these days, insulated glass. The vinyl actually helps so that you don't have heat transfer through the metal that's used to be just one piece, and that helps out a lot too.
Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up questions or points?
Public hearing.
Sorry, a couple things for our record. We did an environmental review. We studied 12 areas that potentially had impacts. We have identified those that are no impacts. They're in your report. Those with potentially significant impacts that can be mitigated. Cultural resources, geology and soils, hazardous materials, noise, public services, and utilities. And we have recommended and suggested mitigation measures. And then, as you alluded to, Mr. Chair, there are 4 areas that are potentially significant and unavoidable that we could not determine or get mitigation measures that will require a statement of overrides. We believe that the benefits of the project outweigh those impacts and are recommending that. You also alluded to a parking exception, and as you stated, we did a shared parking analysis and believe that the sharing of the use of the spaces being provided will be adequate for the demand. It is only on the commercial area. There is fully code compliant parking for the housing and the guest, but the commercial will share. Those 2 items, we just wanted to make sure you, the public, were aware as you adopt or as you consider your resolutions.
It should be noted that the environmental document was about 12 inches tall, 4 volumes,
Yes.
so the public knows. You did an environmental document.
Mayor.
Mr. Lansafame, I think you, for the public's benefit, it would be nice if you could expound upon, or perhaps one of the representatives from the project would expound upon the issue of the parking, because there may have been some misunderstanding between what I was saying and what my colleague, Mr. Najarian, was talking about, having adequate parking versus needing a parking exception. The point I was getting at was in terms of the residential component, and that there is a plan for the commercial. So you might want to explain that a little bit to anybody listening in or anybody in the audience who isn't part of the project, if there is anyone. Let's see.
Sure. Our parking code is really designed for single uses. And on this project, it is a multi-mixed-use project. And I think both of you are correct in that it is providing adequate parking. We did a study to look at the actual demand. How much would each of these uses need at peak times? And their ability to share them because they have different peak times. There is a reduction that from code that is warranted on the commercial aspect. With respect to the residential, we are meeting all the current Glendale City parking codes for both the resident and their guest. And I think, Mr. Mayor, your statement is a valid one in that the project is going to meet its demands, is going to provide parking to meet its demands and not be looking to surrounding areas or other facilities. That's what we demonstrated in the parking analysis. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It absolutely does. I just didn't want anyone to have any confusion over what Chairman Najarian and I were both alluding to in different ways. I sort of feel like we have this board up here, which I placed over on the empty seat over here. I sort of feel like we should ask a couple of questions to Mr. Khan, if he could come forward. Now, and if you don't mind, I'm going to use the phone here at this place just so that you can hear me and I don't have to hold this very heavy board. I noticed that this panel here, it says primary paint color, it says Dry Creek. Would you say that's a dry creek or a very dry creek in color?
Mr. Mayor, am I to pretend that board is Mr. Yusefian?
No. No, please don't.
And respond accordingly?
Yeah. Also, this block says it's a veneer, and that it is Indiana gray. Would you say it's Indiana gray or more Illinois gray?
And I was thinking,
Kind of. Okay. All right, Mr. Khan, I will let you off
He has
the
no
hook.
answers for these questions.
I will let you off the hook.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
It's very dry because there's no moisture content in it.
All right.
Okay, so if I have not closed the public hearing previously, I will close it now. And we have
Mr. Chair?
several motions. Mr.
Move
Weaver,
1A for the agency.
second.
let's take roll call, please.
This is on item
1A,
1A.
agency resolution.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian, Chairman Najarian.
Yes.
And I will entertain a motion.
I'll move 1B for the council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on item 1B. Mr. Kasakian, could you call the roll for the council?
Council members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian, Mayor Draymond.
Yes.
I'll move 1C and D for the agency.
Second.
Roll call, please, on C and D.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian, Chairman Najarian.
Yes.
I
Move to
move we
adjourn for
adjourn
the-
for the agency.
Second.
Agencies adjourned.
Move to adjourn for the council.
Second.
We're adjourned. Council is adjourned. Thank you very much.
If you have a comment or question regarding Channel 6 programming, call us at 818-548-4013.